Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. In the beginning, I was back and forth like Batman, lacking wisdom, no direction for proper decisions. I heard my bro had a show, so I started to listen. Truth of the matter, ain't no comparing the competition. The kid feeling blessed, cause it's clear as when Dex. After talking with Dex, I know just where to step. I know the path gon' be narrow, but my eyes on the sparrow. And the truth of the matter is that truth really matters. Truth of the matter, that truth really matters. Hey. Truth of the matter.
All right. Well, hey, good evening, everybody. I hope you all are doing well on this Sunday, this last Sunday of May. The time is definitely going by pretty fast this year, if we're honest. But listen, this is part one of something that I am entitling the fatherless epidemic, or overcoming the epidemic of fatherlessness. Now I know that for my fellas out there, I'm catching you on. I think the Nets are playing right now. So here's the deal. This is what I promise. I promise not to get too long-winded, because as a man, I know that we have our priorities, and one of the things that probably constitute as a priority is making sure that we don't miss too many playoff games. And so what I'll try to do is make sure that these messages are short, they're to the point, but most of all that they are impactful. So I want to say thank you all for joining me on tonight. Over the next few Sundays, we'll be doing this on Sundays at 8 p.m. Over the next few Sundays, it's my aim to initiate a conversation around the topic of overcoming the epidemic of fatherlessness. Now, listen, I'm currently working on my doctorate. However, I am not a medical professional. But the name of this series was one that I came across very intentionally. I put it out there very intentionally. An epidemic is actually a medical term. It's recognized, and I have the definition here. It's recognized as the rapid spread of a disease to a large number of people in a given population within a short period of time. Now, if you think about this in relation to what it is that I hope that we're going to be talking about and highlighting and getting to the root of over these next couple of weeks. But if you think about it, in the 60s, here in the United States, you were looking at about 7% of children being raised in a single parent household. If you fast forward that to 2021, that number is somewhere around 25%. And so when we're talking about a rapid spread of a disease in a short period of time, what you're saying that in less than 50 years, within the span of 50 years, less than one generation, what we've seen is we've seen the number of single parent households triple, actually over triple in less than 50 years. Now, the word disease, let me highlight that. Disease is a harmful deviation from the normal structural or functional state of an organism. And so at the heart of what I'm saying is that fatherlessness is a disease. And to cure disease, what we must do is we must get to the root of the issue. Okay. And so that is the aim of what we're going to be dealing with over these next couple of weeks. One thing that I want to do as it relates to this subject matter, I want to avoid making any broad indictments as to why things are the way that they are. You know, there's always, a consideration where we can say, well, this led to this and that led to that. The reality is that if we paint it with a broad brush, we find ourselves being not only insensitive, but we find ourselves not really being able to fully speak to the real issue. One thing that I've learned and one thing that I've discovered is when you apply academic reasoning to social issues, you still fail to account for the human factor. Okay. And here's the thing, the human factor, what it entails is that we all have a choice. Okay. We all have a choice. As lecturers, as teachers, as productive people in communities, teachers, what have it, the reality is that we can hope to introduce concepts and ideas that will bring about favorable choices. But the reality is that there will always be people who make illogical choices and decisions. Okay, and so once again, I'm going to try my hardest to avoid making broad indictments, because the reality is that there may be very unique situations, but I don't want to make it seem like that unique situation fits the whole group. Okay, now during this series, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be referencing a lot of material that can be found in my book, Dear Son. All right. And at the end of tonight's message, or at the end of tonight's conversation, I'm going to put up here information on how you can obtain a copy of this book. But here's a few things that I want to share with you. The premise of this book, uh, and we're not doing this is not a book review. This is not a book group, but I want to put it out there that the premise of this book is simple. As a man, what choices are you making to become a better man? Now, the context of this book is framed around the reality is that we as men are we can trace our concept of manhood back to our fathers. All right. So for some of us, that's a good thing, because once again, I'm not making any broad indictments. All right. For some of us, it's a good thing. Our father, not everybody has a father wound. Some of us can say that, what, I was blessed. I had a really good father. He was involved. He fathered his children. He laid the foundation. He was the example. And we always knew that we can count on dad. But I also know that there are many men who didn't have that. The reality is that they had to become what they didn't have. I don't know if that speaks to anybody who might be on here right now, but I know a number of men who had to become that in which they did not have. And their measuring stick of manhood has been defined by something that was broken. As a result of them not having or not being able to assess what they needed, they had to figure it out in that sense. And so what ends up happening is that a lot of these men that I know, they ended up questioning themselves, and they were questioning themselves as they were trying to figure things out because they didn't have any validation or affirmation. All right. And here's the thing, and I'm a minister of the gospel. I'm a minister of the word, and I'm gonna try not to get all preachy tonight. But the reality is that if you're a believer in Christianity, Jesus Christ Himself did not begin His work until He was first affirmed by the Father. God, the Father says, "Behold, my Son. This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased." Jesus got the affirmation well before He even started His ministry. And so what happens is that these men, a lot of men who didn't have that growing up, they go through life always second guessing themselves because they didn't have the measuring stick, or the measuring stick of manhood was not available to them. Something that I've been fortunate enough to do for about a period of about 7 years now, with the exception of last year because of the breakout of COVID. But one of the things that I've been fortunate to do is I've been able to get inside of the prison systems. And normally what I do is I go in there and I speak to a lot of the men that are incarcerated, uh, offering a life skills class in some instances. Sometimes I just go in there as a mentor of some sorts. But I remember very vividly a conversation that I had with a man who was serving a life sentence, or is serving a life sentence. And he told me, he said, I believe that if I had my father, that my life would be a lot different than what it is right now. Um, he understood that there was something missing in his own life. And so what he was doing was he was trying to figure it out on his own. And the figuring out the it's that he was trying to figure out, he was trying to figure out life. And unfortunately, he made the wrong decision as he was trying to navigate life. Now, as a man, speaking candidly about myself, I am a man who, in many instances, I try to figure things out on my own. I'll figure it out on my own approach in many instances. But the reality is that I know that I'm fortunate that I have the benefit of a father. I have the benefit of mentors that are available and accessible to me. But in all honesty, there's a lot of brothers out there in this world who are really just going about life trying to figure it out. And this is why ultimately I wrote this book called Dear Son. There's a healing that needs to take place in the heart of men. If you don't hear anything else, please hear me when I tell you that. Many instances, what you're looking at is you're looking at the outward, the shell, the exterior of a man, but it's not just the outward appearance that makes up that man, it's his experiences. And oftentimes those experiences are rooted in a trauma that they don't have the language to articulate. And so ultimately, what you have is you have a man who, by way of not having that access to an example, is going through life, and he becomes very hard by the life that he's had to live and the life he's had to figure out on his own. I'll take this a little bit further in depth next week. But fatherlessness, and I need you all to hear this, fatherlessness is not just the physical absence of a dad. Fatherlessness can also be attributed to the emotionally unavailable dad. I dare to say that in many instances, the emotionally unavailable father can be just as damaging as the father who's not present in the life of his children. And so, once again, the experiences and the trauma that many men are dealing with, once again, these men don't always have the language um, to articulate it. And so, what I understand is that a lot of people are, especially women, mothers, and daughters, and potential wives, they're concerned about their husband. But the reality is that the husband, the man that he is, a lot of these men, especially if you remember the numbers, 25%, a lot of these men have had to pull. They've had to find examples that weren't always readily available. And I know this is a very loaded subject, and that's why I'm not going to try to breeze through it all tonight. But one of the things, once again, that I want to accomplish on tonight is I want to lay the framework of where we're going to be going over the next couple of weeks. Now, the inspiration of this book, Dear Son, it can be found from a biblical scripture. It's Malachi chapter 4, verse 6. And I'm going to read that to you really quickly. And he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to the fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. A lot of people, excuse me, a lot of people, when they read the Bible and they hear the word curse, they probably attribute it to, a pestilence or some famine or some, catastrophic Old Testament event. However, the curse may be that man has no sense of direction. Um, and so it seems like that man does not know how to guide his family. The curse may be that man having a mental and emotional breakdown because the father didn't show that man how to deal with pressure in a healthy manner. The curse may be when the pressures of life come, that man is tempted to quit because he didn't have a father to show him how to pace himself. He didn't have a father to help him with his perspective to say, you know what, this situation isn't as detrimental as you may think that it is. And here's the real curse. The curse is that these thought processes, they spread through each generation, with the narrative being echoed that no one was there to teach me. And what you end up having is you have a man who disappears under the pressure, under the weight of the pressure. He disappears because their first teacher of manhood left. And that in of itself is a curse, because ultimately when we're looking at what's going on in our society, and we're asking why is it that maybe these kids are out of control, why is it that X, Y, and Z is happening, you have to trace it back to the that father and the impact that absence has created within that structure. Because once again, disease, as we said, it's a harmful deviation from the structural and functional state of an organism. We've broken up the norm, and now we have created a false normalcy. It's become the norm for the man to not be present. It's become the norm for the father's impact to not be there. One of the things that happened in last year, I was able to found an organization, and I work with some amazing mentors. But we mentor at-risk youth. We initially we were mentoring at-risk males, young men, but it seems like we starting to have a lot of young ladies coming on board, and we have some now women mentors. But the reality is, one of the things that I've been recognizing in the conversations with these mothers is they are ultimately looking for a father for their sons. They are, that it's under the pretense that, hey, I need, my son needs mentorship. But as I hear the conversation, what these mothers are saying is that my son needs a father. my my son needs somebody to offer guidance and give him a vocabulary and the example of manhood, especially as he himself is coming to a place of manhood. And so as I'm working with a lot of these young men, my heart goes out to them because I want to ask them, where's their father? What is their father saying about these issues that they're experiencing? Because as a mentor, one of the things that I caution my fellow mentors with, I say, hey, look, um, at the end of the day, our role is to complement what the parents are doing. Our role is not to become the parent per se, but it's to complement the parent. But in many instances, we're finding ourselves being thrust into a position where these young men need to be fathered. And so I say all that to say this is that whether you are a young man or whether you are an old man, there's a lot of things that we're going to have to reconcile within ourselves. We're going to have to get the healing. And that's what I hope comes from these next couple of weeks of our time together. Now, there's a duality. If you are a man who has children, there's a duality of I need to heal as a son, but I also need to become resolved as the father. Now, the issue is that oftentimes, once again, if you had a broken measuring stick, meaning that if your father was not accessible and available to you, oftentimes many men talk about feeling deficient in the role of fathering their own children because they don't know if they're doing a good job. The reality is we're going to have to become resolved and once again becoming that in which we did not have, while subsequently healing from the wounds that we incurred from those who left us behind. Now, once again, now this might not fit for the men who say, hey, you know what, maybe I had a good father, maybe he passed away early and I didn't get to know him. Well, listen, this book still speaks to you, because there's still some conversations that I believe that ultimately we as men feel like we wish we had with our fathers. I a couple of years ago co-launched a organization called When Men Open Up with a good friend and brother of mine by the name of Dominique, and that's actually here on Facebook, or you can find this on podcasts. But When Men Open Up, we dealt with a lot of serious subject matters as it pertains to men. I mean, subject matters, as heavy as men who were molested, and for as heavy as that content was, our most viewed subject, our most viewed message was a message entitled "Conversations I Wish I Had with My Father." And I think that speaks volumes, because there's a lot of men acknowledging that, what, as a man, there's some things that I wish that I had the ability to talk to my dad about. There's some conversations that maybe he wasn't there, maybe he passed away early, but I feel like as a man, there's something that I missed out on. And we as men, once again, we're going to have to reconcile the hurt so that we're not passing it on to our children. And so I want to share this with you really quickly before we close on this evening, because once again, I know that I'm competing with the finals on tonight. And this comes from, once again, the book Dear Son. Now, what I plan on doing is I'm going to share an excerpt each time we get together that ties into the theme of what we talked about on that evening. Tonight, we talked about the absenteeism. We did an overview of the significance of the absentee father. And so, in Dear Son, um, in the beginning of this book, there's 5 different distinct voices of different fathers. Okay. And so tonight, I'm going to share an excerpt from the absentee father. Hello, son. I understand if it angers you to hear me say that. I know that you don't know me. I know that you don't owe me anything. But as the dad you never knew, there are some things I want to share with you. I imagine you may want to know why I've been absent. I could tell you that I was too young, that things between your mother and I couldn't work out. However, I don't have a legitimate answer to this question, because all my answers are nothing more than excuses. Excuses that don't justify my absence. I have been selfish, and I apologize for not allowing myself to consider how my decisions have impacted your life. I know that my actions have failed you, but I want you to know that you are great despite my shortcomings. Please know that my rejection of you is not a reflection of your value, but an indictment of who I was as a man. I don't know what our future holds, but however, I hope this book can serve as a point of connection for us. The reality is that uh, from the vantage point of the absentee father, um, and there's some exercises in this book to really kind of facilitate that healing process. But the absentee father, what he does is when he abandons the child, in many instances, the child attributes that to their own self worth. Why was he not there for me? And ultimately, what you have is you have men who go through their life being connected to that thought of not feeling the value. And and I'll be 100% honest, many of us men, we don't know how to put that into words, but what that is that's rejection. And so how it plays out is it plays out in life when maybe we don't get the jobs or we don't get the opportunities. It has nothing to do with the event with your father, but in your mind it tells you that I'm of no value. So subconsciously, you're making the connection to what the absentee father did. And now, when life starts to give you situations that are similar, that voice in your head keeps telling you that I'm of no value. And so that's a part of the healing process that I hope takes place as you read this book and over these next couple of weeks. So, listen, we're going to go into more specifics next week. Like I said, this was just to serve as a laying the foundation, kind of the framework of where we're going to be going over the next couple of weeks. But do me a huge favor if this helped you. If you see the value, I ask that you share this with other men. Listen, most men, They're not going to tell you, hey, I need some healing. And, that's not our language. But you can say, hey, brother, I think that this video might help, and if it doesn't help you, maybe it'll help someone else that you know. I'm also going to air this commercial here in a minute for the book. If you would like to get a copy, I would ask that you would go to my website, which is dexterpegansjr.com, or you can also get it on Amazon. And on Amazon, it's actually available in paperback copy, Kindle, as well as there's an audiobook version. I want to say thank you all again for joining me on tonight. I don't know who's winning the game, but I'm as promised, I was going to keep it short tonight to allow everybody to get back to the playoffs. But I just want to say thank you for joining me. Until next time, I will see you all later. God bless.
There is a prevailing crisis that has crippled families and communities for decades. This crisis has a direct association to higher crime rates, increased poverty, and cost the nation millions of dollars annually. The crisis is the epidemic of fatherlessness. What would the world look like if fathers were not only physically present, but emotionally available as well? What would the conversation between the repentant father and the dejected son sound like? Recognizing that sons, both young and old, need to hear a heart of a father serves as the motivation for this literary work. This book is for those who need wisdom and guidance, never had those necessary moments with their father, or wish they had more moments with their father. Through the affirmation of a father's love, this book will traverse the difficult path from disappointment to hope, and from alienation to reconciliation.